I was their home. They locked me out. I wish I could say the betrayal happened in one explosive moment. But it didn't. It was slow, surgical, like bleeding out from a paper cut you didn't even realize sliced you. My name is Olivia. I'm 48. I was married for 24 years. Gave up a promising career in design to raise 2 children, keep a home, support my husband's growing business, and hold a family together that, in hindsight, never held me back. They only held me down. It started with a text message on a Thursday. I was folding laundry, Greg's shirts, still warm from the dryer, when my phone buzzed on the windowsill. A number I didn't recognize. I almost ignored it, but I didn't. You deserve to know what your husband does when he says he's at conferences. Check the attachments. There were 14 photos. Not one. Not blurry ones. Not something deniable. 14 high-resolution images of my husband on a yacht, sipping cocktails with a woman half his age. Long legs, gold hoop earrings, her head on his shoulder. In one, she kissed his chest while he grinned. In another, they held hands at a cliffside restaurant. The timestamps were a nightmare. 3 years ago, 2 years ago, last spring. They weren't just cheating. They were vacationing. Meanwhile, I had been home, scraping mildew out of the bathroom tiles, organizing school bake sales, nursing strep throat while Greg was too busy to help. The rage didn't come first. It was the grief, the kind that breaks quietly, like bone under velvet. I didn't confront him, not yet. Instead, I started watching him. Greg was arrogant. He thought I was dumb, too tired, too loyal. He left his iPad unlocked. I scoured it at night, wrapped in a blanket on the bathroom floor while he snored in the bedroom. I found a secret email account, a Venmo transfers labeled Coffee Red Heart and Thanks Babe kiss mark, hotel bookings in Cancun, Paris, and Rome. All during the same weeks he told me he had off-site training. And then I found something that made me stop breathing. A will. Signed. Witnessed. Recent. In it, Greg left 90% of our assets, including our home, to our children. And if I predeceased him? Nothing. No note. No clause. Not even a mention. Just gone. That's when it hit me. Greg wasn't just cheating on me. He was phasing me out. The kids, Ethan, 23, and Lila, 21. Had been drifting away for years. I chalked it up to growing up. College, life, independence. I blamed myself. But the signs had always been there. When I confronted Ethan last Christmas for barely speaking to me, he said, "You're always emotional, Mom. You overreact. You live in the past." When I asked Lila to visit during my birthday, she texted, "You act like we owe you time. Maybe try finding a hobby instead of baking and guilt-tripping." At the time, those words had shattered me. Now, they just made sense. Greg had been feeding them a version of me that suited him, needy, dramatic, overbearing. And the kids? They believed him. I was the woman who packed their lunches, who stayed up all night when they had the flu, who cried when they got into college. But to them now, I was inconvenient. When I found a group chat, Greg, Lila, Ethan, where they made jokes about Mom's vintage breakdowns and how I still thought family dinner was sacred, something in me snapped. The 3 people I loved most had already written me out of their lives. So I stopped trying. I stopped cooking. Stopped reminding them about appointments. Stopped texting good mornings and good nights. And no one noticed. Not even once. I visited a lawyer. Quietly. Paid in cash. Asked about divorce, assets, hidden accounts. My hands shook so bad, I dropped the pen twice while signing the retainer. Then I hired a forensic accountant. Greg had 2 hidden accounts. One in his name, one in Lila's. He was siphoning our retirement, funding her startup. And all the while, I was clipping coupons, trying to make it work, buying their shampoo and snack bars and pretending we were still a family. But they had already replaced me with silence. So I made a plan. The day I'd confront them, all 3 would be a dinner. A farewell meal I'd cook one last time. I'd invite them as family. I'd make their favorites. And when dessert hit the table, so would the truth. And then I'd walk away from the ruins with everything I had left. Update 1. The dinner where I finally died in their eyes. I had spent 2 days preparing that dinner. Not just the food, but the moment, the performance. It wasn't about revenge. Not really. It was about truth. About putting every piece of me, the woman they had ignored, betrayed, discarded, right in front of them, wrapped in familiarity, and then tearing the mask off. The house was spotless, the table glowing with gold-trimmed plates we hadn't used since Ethan's high school graduation. I wore perfume for the first time in years. The same one Greg had given me on our 10th anniversary, back when he still looked at me like I was his future instead of a burden. I made Greg's favorite garlic butter salmon, Lila's mushroom risotto, Ethan's obsession chocolate soufflé. I poured the wine slowly, watching the red swirl like blood in a glass. They all arrived separately, and none of them looked happy to be there. Greg walked in first, kissed my cheek like a stranger. His lips cold, eyes scanning the room like he was in someone else's house. He sat without saying much, fiddling with his wedding ring, which he still wore like a disguise. Ethan came next, smelling of aftershave and weed, barely glancing at me before asking if we could keep this short. Lila, predictably, came last, still on her phone when she entered. She didn't even take off her shoes. The disrespect was so natural, so unconscious, it made me nauseous. I wasn't a mother or wife to them anymore, just a formality. An outdated piece of furniture they hadn't figured out how to get rid of. I watched them eat. Their faces didn't soften. No appreciation. No nostalgia. Just chewing, scrolling, and sighing. I was ready. I had rehearsed what I'd say about the cheating, the secret accounts, the will, about how I knew everything. But just as I set down my fork to speak, Greg beat me to it. Actually, Liv, I have something to say first. My name in his mouth sounded like poison. I filed for divorce. You'll get the papers tomorrow. I thought you deserved to hear it in person. I didn't react. Not even a blink. I had waited so long to see his real face. And here it was, smug, confident, even relieved, like someone who finally put down a bag they'd been pretending was light. He reached for his wine, took a sip, and smiled like he'd won. But I had my knife too. That's fine. I filed last week. Your paperwork's coming Monday. His expression cracked. For just a second, he lost control. That twitch in his jaw, the quick dart of his eyes to Lila and Ethan. You? What? And while you were busy scheduling my funeral in that will of yours, I was hiring a forensic accountant. Those hidden accounts? The one in Lila's name? Yeah. The judge will love that. Lila dropped her fork. You went through my bank account? You used my money, my address, my trust. You were part of this. I didn't ask for that. She snapped, her voice rising. I didn't even know what Dad was doing. You knew enough, I said, my voice like glass. You knew enough to treat me like a joke. That's when Greg stood up. This is exactly what I meant, he said, turning to the kids. See? This is what I've been talking about. She's paranoid. She's unstable. She snoops. She obsesses. She's not well. I froze. The trap was deeper than I thought. I'm petitioning for full ownership of the house, he continued, and a competency hearing. I have emails, texts, even old voicemails. She's spiraling. Couldn't breathe. The room blurred. My own children were just watching him, not even protesting. Ethan looked down at his lap. Lila was texting someone. You're trying to get me declared mentally unfit? I asked quietly. Greg didn't answer, but the silence did. The man I built a life with, who once begged me to marry him under a thunderstorm, was now weaponizing my emotions to erase me legally. You gaslit me for years, I whispered. And now you want to make it official. It's not gaslighting if it's true, Liv, he said. You've changed. You're always emotional, irrational. I changed because you broke me, I snapped. Because you all chipped away at me until there was nothing left to hold. That's when Ethan finally spoke. Mom, maybe it's just time to let things go. You're making this worse than it has to be. That hurt more than Greg's betrayal. That came from the boy I held against my chest the first night he had nightmares. The boy who once said I was his favorite person. And now he looked at me like I was embarrassing. I picked up the bottle of wine. Looked at the label. 2015. The year Greg first cheated. I poured it into the sink. Let it swirl down like everything I'd held inside for years. Dinner is over, I said calmly. And so is the story you've been telling yourselves. No one stopped me as I walked out. No one apologized. No one followed. They didn't even ask if I was okay. In that moment, I realized something brutal. They didn't love me anymore. Maybe they never did. Maybe they only loved the idea of me, the one who served, smiled, stayed quiet. But that version of me was dead now. And in her place, a woman who had nothing left to lose, which meant she finally had everything she needed to fight. Update 2. The mistress, the warnings, and the whispers in the walls. I didn't sleep for days after the dinner. The silence in the house wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. Every shadow felt like it was watching me. Every creak in the floor, every flicker of the lights. It all felt intentional. Like Greg had left ghosts behind to keep tormenting me in his absence. I kept hearing his voice. Not in a hallucination sort of way, I mean his actual voice. Voicemails I never remembered getting. Text-to-speech messages I know I never sent. Some were in my own phone, scheduled to send to myself. That's when it hit me. He was planting seeds. Whispers. Digital trails. A full psychological takedown, like he was building a museum of my collapse before it ever happened. I couldn't prove it, not yet, but it was all too precise. My old therapist had even emailed me back saying Greg had reached out months ago, with concerns about my condition. He'd painted a portrait of me as a woman unraveling. Desperate. Dangerous. Unstable. I thought I was being paranoid until she showed up. The knock wasn't hesitant. It was assertive, sharp. Someone who wanted to be heard. When I opened the door, I felt like I was looking into the version of myself that Greg wished I had been. Younger, polished, docile. She didn't wait for me to invite her in. I'm Rachel. I've been seeing Greg. Well, I was seeing him. I laughed. Loudly. Bitterly. Get in line. But she wasn't smug. She didn't carry herself like someone coming to gloat. She was jittery. Pale. Her eyes flicked around the room like she was afraid someone else was listening. She stood in my living room like it belonged to her, or like she had imagined it did. For a split second, I wondered if she had been here while I was out. If my home had already been violated by the woman my husband was replacing me with. I didn't come here to fight, she said softly. I came to warn you. She handed me a flash drive, then a stack of printed messages. Photos, DMs, chat logs, receipts from gift shops and lingerie stores. At first, it was all predictable. A 29-year-old woman swept into an affair with a man twice her age who fed her a script. Broken marriage, crazy wife, just staying for the kids. He told her I was emotionally erratic, that I'd refused medication, that I talked to myself, that I'd once tried to drive into a lake. I never did, but the details were too specific to be imagined. He had fabricated a version of me and made her believe it. Worse, he had made others believe it too. He showed her fake therapy notes. He even edited one of my old journals, pages ripped out and rewritten to sound like suicidal ramblings. He was manufacturing my insanity. I started doubting things when he changed the locks on your house, she said, her hands trembling. He said you were dangerous and he was protecting himself. But then I saw your pictures were still up. Your clothes were still here. He brought you here? I asked, my stomach folding in on itself. She looked away. Once, briefly, he said it was his house. He never mentioned you lived here. I wanted to scream, cry, tear the walls down. But I didn't, because suddenly, the walls weren't just painted beige and quiet. They were evidence. Greg had used this house as a crime scene, a stage. And I had been the victim he wrote into a script he directed from the shadows. Rachel handed me one last envelope. Contained a recording. I confronted him about another girl, she said. He got angry. I started recording. I listened, my hands shaking. If she keeps snooping, I'll have her committed, Greg's voice said coolly. There's enough evidence. The emails, the meds, the videos. I've been documenting everything for years. No court will believe a manic woman over me. She's the mother of your kids, Rachel's voice whispered. She was useful. Now she's just in the way. That was the moment my world stopped spinning. Not just because he said it, but because he had planned it. For years. While I was baking his birthday cakes and rubbing his aching back and making sure the kids made it to school, he was documenting me like a case file. I'm willing to testify, Rachel said. I have nothing left to lose. Before she left, she turned around at the door. There's more, she said. He's been talking to a psychiatrist, Lila's friend's mom. She's writing an evaluation, one she hasn't even met you for. Couldn't breathe. Greg was having me profiled, diagnosed, institutionalized, in theory, with the help of people who hadn't even looked me in the eye. I wasn't just fighting a custody or divorce battle. I was fighting for my identity, my sanity, my existence. That night I didn't sleep. Instead, I combed through every journal, every email, every scrap of paper I'd written on for the last 10 years. I scanned them, time-stamped them, stored copies online and offline. I printed photos, labeled them with dates. I gathered receipts, calendars, medical records. Because now I understood. I wasn't just going to war. I was going to trial for my life. Greg thought he was playing chess. But I was done being the queen who protects everyone else. This time I was going to be the damn board. Update 3. My daughter took the stand against me, and I watched myself be erased. There's something no one tells you about betrayal. It doesn't always come like a blade. Sometimes it creeps in like rot. Slow, quiet, disguised as love. After Rachel handed me that recording of Greg, the one where he casually outlined my erasure, I thought I was prepared for war. I wasn't. Greg didn't come to fight. He came to rewrite me. And he started with the one person who still clung to me with love. Lila. When my lawyer submitted the flash drive and Rachel's statement to the court, we expected blowback, denial, maybe counteraccusations. But Greg didn't just fight back. He annihilated me. Within days, my family group chat, the one where I used to send birthday invites and holiday greetings, lit up with passive-aggressive silence. Then came the calls. Not to me, but to my brother, to my aunt, to Jason's soccer coach. A soft campaign, little whispers like, "We're worried about Olivia. She's been spiraling lately. She's claiming Greg is trying to have her committed. Can you believe that?" And then he went nuclear. At exactly 6:08 p.m. on a Thursday, just as I was picking up groceries in Jason's dry cleaning, Greg leaked a carefully edited, weaponized version of our life. He sent an anonymous email to our neighborhood association, our children's school staff, my ex-colleagues, and even the church email list I hadn't touched in years. It was titled, "Concerned about Olivia. Please read." Contained a stitched-together video of me crying, pacing, mumbling during a panic attack I had in 2020. My journal entries, not the ones full of poetry and love, but the pages I used to unload raw emotions. Pain, fears, late-night thoughts that weren't meant for anyone. A forged prescription printout showing lithium and mood stabilizers under my name. Screenshots of messages I never sent, implying suicidal ideation and manic episodes. It looked real, convincing. It was horrifying. Within hours, Lila's friends' moms began blocking me. Jason's piano teacher asked if Greg should take over his lessons until I got help. My own cousin messaged me to say, "Olivia, what's happening? Are you okay? You can tell me if you're a danger to yourself." I wasn't angry at them. I was angry at how easy it was to manipulate the world against me. I wasn't losing my family. I was being erased from their trust, from their memory, and replaced with a cautionary tale. But the final blow hadn't landed yet. That came in court. The courtroom was colder than I remembered. Sterile, like it had been scrubbed clean of empathy. I sat beside my lawyer, her hand gently resting on mine, but it felt like I was floating above myself. Greg walked in like a grief-stricken father doing his best. He even wore reading glasses, props I had never seen him use in 18 years. His expression was the perfect mixture of concern and exhaustion. Then the judge looked up and said, The father's legal team has requested a character witness to speak on behalf of the children. Ms. Lila Carter. My daughter. My child. I didn't know she was coming. Greg didn't say a word. He filed the motion the night before, under seal, so we couldn't object in time. She walked in wearing a gray cardigan I bought her last Christmas. Her hair was curled like I used to do it for her piano recitals. But she wouldn't meet my eyes. Her voice was so soft, I had to strain to hear her. Sometimes, my mom scares me. She gets really emotional. Once she screamed at the coffee maker for 10 minutes. She talks to herself sometimes. The room spun. That was the morning after Greg didn't come home for 2 days. I had been sleep-deprived, worried sick, sobbing as I tried to call him, and the coffee maker simply overflowed. That was it. A moment. A human moment. But to Lila, it was scary, because Greg had told her to see me that way. The prosecutor asked, "Has your father ever made you feel unsafe?" She shook her head. Then she whispered something I'll never forget. "He takes care of us. Mom just breaks a lot." I broke right there. On the inside, I wanted to scream, to yank her off that podium, to shake her and say, "It's all lies. He's turning you into a soldier in his war." But I couldn't, because any sign of anger would confirm their script. So I sat there, motionless, watching a version of myself being presented to the court. A distorted, fragile, unstable character written by the man who once vowed to protect me. The judge didn't rule that day, but he didn't have to. When I walked out, Lila was waiting by the water fountain. Her eyes were red. "Dad said if I didn't say those things, they'd send you away," she whispered. "He promised it would help you get better. Do you believe him?" I asked softly. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she said. "But I miss you." She looked at me like she was staring through glass, like I was someone frozen in place. I didn't touch her. I didn't cry. I just said, "I'll bring the truth back to you, no matter what it costs me." That night I didn't sleep. I combed through every file Greg ever sent me. Every accidental CC'd email. Every forgotten receipt. Every trace of his trail of destruction. I started building a timeline, a psychological map, a counter-narrative. And then I began to write, not to the court, not to the family, but to the world. A blog, anonymous, honest, bleeding. Called it, "The Woman He Erased." Update for my story went viral. Then the darkness got louder. They say the truth sets you free. But they never tell you what happens in the space between the lie collapsing and the truth catching up. Spoiler, it's hell. When I posted my first entry on The Woman He Erased, I didn't expect an audience. I didn't even put my name on it. I just bled. I wrote the truth in all its messy, ugly, bone-deep pain. And then I hit publish like lighting a match in the dark. I didn't expect the fire. It was Rachel who first messaged me. "Olivia, are you seeing this?" Attached was a screenshot, my blog featured on a trauma survivor subreddit with 70,000 upvotes and counting. The top comment? "This feels too real. If this is fiction, give this woman a Pulitzer. If it's true, we need to help her." Then came the flood. Emails, messages, DMs. Some were raw and heartbreaking. A woman told me her husband made her believe she had early-onset dementia, but she was only 33. Another said she'd been hospitalized for paranoia after finding her husband's secret second family, and no one believed her. But not everyone came with empathy. Some comments were cruel. "Maybe you are the problem. He sounds like a good dad. Are you just bitter? You're what happens when women can't handle rejection." Greg's minions weren't far behind. 2 days after my third blog entry, an anonymous Reddit user leaked what they claimed was a psychiatric report about me, completely fabricated. It included details about a suicide attempt I never made, claims of manic episodes, and even an incident at my children's school that never happened. The post went viral. For a brief, horrifying 36 hours, I was trending on Twitter under hashtag Olivia the Liar. People dissected me like an open wound. Strangers debated my sanity while sipping coffee and scrolling. TikTok therapists weighed in. "Classic case of borderline personality disorder," one said confidently. never having met me. But worse than the public was what happened in private. I found a GPS tracker under my car. Someone subscribed me to over 200 newsletters, gun sales, neo-Nazi forums, and adult services. My inbox imploded. I changed my number. It didn't matter. The new number got flooded too. Then Rachel stopped replying. When I finally reached her, her voice trembled. Greg's firm sent a warning to my employer. They're threatening to sue for breach of confidentiality. I'm so sorry, Liv. I can't be involved anymore. The one ally who had risked her career for me was gone. And just like that, I was alone again. Or so I thought. The doorbell rang at 1:47 a.m. on a rainy Friday. I froze, peered through the peephole, no one. But a package lay on my doorstep, brown paper, no return address. Inside, a Polaroid of me brushing my hair by the window, my back to the camera, taken from across the street. And a note. Keep writing, Olivia. Let's see what your blood looks like on paper. My legs gave out. I called the police. Again. They opened a file. But I could hear the apathy in their voice. You sure this isn't just your ex trying to rattle you? He said he wants to see my blood. Well, it's not technically a direct threat. You might want to stay offline. Stay offline? My voice was all I had left. The truth was my only weapon. And they wanted me to put it down and sit quiet while I was hunted? No, I wouldn't give them that. Then something happened I couldn't have predicted. A new leak, not from me. An anonymous whistleblower posted a Google Drive link on my blog's comment section, titled, The Real Greg Carter. I clicked. Inside were emails, court transcripts, blacked out financial records, and a conversation between Greg and his attorney that read like a mafia confession. Her mental breakdown is inevitable. She's already cracking. All we have to do is make it look natural. Don't push too fast. What about the kids? She'll lose custody. We'll make sure she's declared a risk. She's too emotional. Always was. They planned it all. The gaslighting, the erasure, the character assassination. He wasn't afraid of me. He was afraid of what I represented. A woman no longer afraid of burning down the lie she was trapped in. I went to my new lawyer, Kendra, a sharp, brutal former federal prosecutor. When she read the emails, her eyes widened. This isn't a custody case anymore. This is conspiracy, Olivia. We're filing for an emergency injunction. But Greg knew. Somehow he knew. The next night, my bedroom window shattered at 3 a.m. I screamed, clutched the taser I now slept beside, and found nothing. But outside, carved into the hood of my car. Enough. The next day, Jason was pulled from my scheduled visit. No warning. No contact. Just a text from Greg's lawyer. Due to recent behavioral concerns, we are temporarily suspending visitation. A hearing is forthcoming. I collapsed in my kitchen, sobbing so violently I couldn't breathe. I wasn't just losing. I was drowning, and they kept pushing my head further under. But then came the call I never thought I'd get. From the ethics board. The judge presiding over my case, the one Greg used to play tennis with, was under investigation. The leaks were real. The connections undeniable. The case was moved. The judge recused. And a new hearing was ordered. Suddenly, Greg wasn't untouchable. And just like that, I saw it, a crack in his empire. But before I could celebrate, I got the voicemail from Lila. Her voice was shaking, barely audible. Mom, I think something's wrong with Dad. He said if you don't stop, he'll make sure you never see me or Jason again. He's scaring me. I don't know what to do. Please call me back. Please. And then it cut out. I dialed. Over and over. No answer. I messaged. Emailed. Even tried Greg's number. Nothing. So now, I sit in my car, engine running, outside the gates of their house, waiting. Waiting for the daughter who's caught in the middle. For the son who's being pulled further from me. For the man who built a throne on my silence, and is finally watching it crack beneath him. The next hearing is in 9 days. Greg is unraveling, but so am I. And when we face each other next, it won't be as husband and wife. It'll be as warriors on opposite sides of truth. And only one of us is walking away with our name still intact. Update 5. The trial broke us all and rebuilt me from ashes. I used to think the courtroom would be the place where everything was resolved, where truth would finally scream louder than the lies. But I didn't know then that justice doesn't arrive like a savior. It bleeds in slowly, painfully, one revelation at a time. The week before the final custody hearing was a war zone of legal chaos, emotional numbness, and razor-sharp anxiety. My lawyer Kendra was relentless, her focus terrifying in its precision. She didn't just prepare me for court. She trained me for combat. "You don't have to be perfect," she told me the night before. "You just have to be clear. Show them who he really is, and show them who you still are." But inside, I was barely holding myself together, because my daughter Lila was still silent. Jason too. My calls to them kept going straight to voicemail. When I tried to message Lila again, I received a reply, short, robotic, clearly not in her words. "Please refrain from further contact. This number is monitored." Greg was choking them with his poison until the very last minute. Court day. The courtroom was packed. Journalists, bloggers, trauma advocates, and at least 3 national outlets were present. It was surreal seeing people scribbling notes about my life like I was just another headline. Greg arrived in full armor, designer suit, his smug attorney at his side, and a performance-ready face like he was there to accept a humanitarian award. He scanned the room and smirked when he didn't see Lila or Jason. He thought he had won. Again. But what he didn't know was that Kendra had prepared one last blow. One Greg couldn't see coming. The judge, Miriam Kovac, was no-nonsense and carried the courtroom like a battlefield commander. "Let's begin. Mrs. Carter, you may approach." And just like that, it was my stage. I stood there, hand trembling, voice cracking, staring across the courtroom at a man who once promised me the world, and then shattered me piece by piece. And I told them everything. The manipulation, the psychological warfare, the moment he convinced our children I was unstable. The nights I cried into a towel because I didn't want Lila to hear me through the wall. I told the judge how I lost not just my family but myself. Then I showed them the evidence. Every email, every forged lie. The recordings, the ones where Greg coached Jason on what to say to the court therapist. The receipts from private investigators who had illegally surveilled me for over 6 months. And finally, I pulled out the Polaroid I had received on my doorstep. The one with me brushing my hair in my window, taken from across the street. The courtroom gasped. Even Judge Kovac's face hardened. Greg shifted uncomfortably. His lawyer whispered to him, frantic. And then Kendra said the words that would flip everything. "We'd like to call one final witness to the stand, Your Honor." The double doors creaked open, and in walked Lila, my daughter, my sweet, bright, wounded Lila. Greg visibly flinched. She walked slowly, deliberately, and didn't spare him a glance. Instead, she looked straight at me, with a single tear already falling from her cheek. And then she took the stand. What she said didn't just crack the courtroom. It obliterated it. "I was told my mom abandoned me," she began, voice shaking. "That she chose her career. That she was mentally sick and dangerous. That she didn't love us anymore." She paused, looking directly at the judge. But that was a lie. My dad lied. He blocked her calls. He deleted her emails. He played recordings of her crying and told us she was unstable. But he wanted us to hate her. She reached into her jacket and pulled out a flash drive. I found this in his office. Inside it, unaltered voice memos, secretly recorded arguments. Greg coaching her and Jason on what to say in court. Manipulations in his own voice, casual and cold. "Just say you're scared of her. She'll go away easier if they think she's unstable." The silence in the room was radioactive. The judge looked like she had seen a ghost. Greg stood up, mouth open, about to yell something, but his attorney physically pulled him back into his seat. Lila looked at him, finally, and asked the question that broke me. "Why did you make me hate my own mother?" Court was adjourned with urgency. The judge promised a ruling within 48 hours. But everyone in the room already knew the verdict. Greg walked out alone. and I walked out with my daughter's hand wrapped around mine. The verdict. 2 days later, Judge Kovac delivered her decision via a live Zoom session, with both legal teams present. The court finds that Mr. Gregory Carter has engaged in systematic emotional and psychological manipulation of both children, falsified documentation, and acted in bad faith throughout the custody process. Full legal and physical custody is hereby awarded to Mrs. Olivia Carter, effective immediately. Greg screamed, on camera, like an animal caged. He was held in contempt right then and there. I didn't celebrate. I just exhaled. For the first time in years. Jason came home a week later. He cried for 2 hours in my arms. I didn't know what was real, he said. I thought you left because of me. I told him the truth. Every ugly, broken, bleeding truth. And he just held my hand the entire time, whispering, I'm sorry I didn't know. Now, Greg is under federal investigation for fraud and witness tampering. He's already been blackballed from every major law firm in the region. No more suits, no more masks, just the truth. I live in a smaller house now, cozier, warmer, real. Lila dances again. Jason writes music. We laugh at dinner. Sometimes they ask if I'm still scared of him. And I tell them, I was never scared of him. I was scared of who I became to survive him. But I'm not scared anymore. This story is mine now. And if you're reading this, if you've ever been made to doubt your truth, please know, you are not overreacting. You are not too sensitive. You are not broken. You were just betrayed. But you can come back. I did. And I'm still here. Still rising. Still loud. Still me. Epilogue. The safe was never locked, and neither was the past. It had been 16 months since the judge's gavel came down and handed me back the life Greg had tried so hard to erase. 16 months since I stood in that courtroom and peeled off every lie he had dressed me in. You'd think that after all that time, the pain would dull. But grief doesn't disappear. It changes shape. Sometimes it's silence over dinner, when Jason stares at his fork like it's an anchor to the past. Sometimes it's the sound of Lila locking her bedroom door, even though no one ever told her to. And sometimes it's just me, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, touching the scar on my shoulder. The one Greg never caused physically, but which appeared after the night I almost collapsed trying to hold our family together. We were healing, slowly, stubbornly. But peace doesn't come without shadows. And one of those shadows arrived in a letter. Came in a plain white envelope. No postmark, no sender, just my name. I nearly tossed it. I'd been getting the occasional hate letter from Greg's sympathizers. Anonymous voices who thought I weaponized motherhood. Who called me a feminist wrecking ball with a vengeance complex. I'd gotten used to it. But something about this envelope felt different. Inside was a single line. You think he acted alone? That was it. No signature. No threat. Just that question, haunting, cold, and perfectly timed. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. A scare tactic. Greg had plenty of minions and enablers who still clung to the illusion he was a misunderstood genius. But something inside me, some long-dead instinct, screamed that this wasn't over. So I called Sophia, Greg's younger sister, the one who vanished the second court got messy, the one who stood by Greg at the custody hearing, and then disappeared from both his and my life. I didn't expect her to pick up, but she did. And when she answered, she was already crying. Liv, you found it, didn't you? That stopped me cold. Found what? The letter. I didn't want to be part of it anymore. I didn't want to carry his secrets. Not after Vermont. Not after what I saw. What did you see, Sophia? She hesitated. Then she whispered, you need to go to the cabin. The cabin. It was always Greg's retreat. His man cave in the Vermont woods, where he claimed to recharge. No Wi-Fi, no kids, no questions. I was never invited. Not once in our 15 years of marriage. He always said, it's where I go to think. You wouldn't get it. But now, I had to get it. I packed the car without telling the kids. I told Jason and Lila I needed a weekend to myself. They understood. They'd seen the anxiety return. the shadows under my eyes. They hugged me and didn't ask questions. And I drove. The cabin sat like a corpse in the middle of the forest, pristine, but lifeless. The kind of place serial killers probably wrote Christmas cards from. The door was unlocked. That didn't surprise me. But the safe? That did. Because it was tucked behind a fake wall panel in his office, not hidden behind books like in every movie. But it was open. No lock. No alarm. It was almost like he wanted it found eventually. Inside were 5 manila folders, labeled in Greg's handwriting. Operation Reverse Custody Narrative. Emotional Calibration Trials. Consultants. Private Counsel Discretion. Live. My name. I opened that one first. It held pages upon pages of notes, all about me. Psychological profiling. Personality tests. Journal entries I had written during couples therapy. How did he even get those? Then recordings. Conversations between me and the kids, taken without consent. A full transcript of one of my private therapy sessions. Surveillance photos, blurry, black and white snapshots of me grocery shopping, brushing my hair, hugging Lila outside a bookstore. Next to them were annotations in red ink. Too maternal. Weaponize this. Note. Rehearsed breakdown at school. Show concern unfit. Use Jason's anxiety against her. Blame her side of family. I threw up right there, in the middle of the floor next to his leather chair. Because I wasn't his ex-wife in these files. I was a project, target, a case study. And Greg wasn't alone. The folder labeled Consultants contained invoices, names of firms, obscure PR groups, narrative specialists, even a so-called child behavior strategist who claimed she could help realign parental loyalty through suggestion-based repetition. She'd been at our house once. I thought she was a tutor. She was an operative. And the worst? Some of these consultants were still active. Their websites were up. Their testimonials vague enough to slip through legal cracks. But one thing was clear. Greg was never a rogue genius. He was part of a system. One that quietly trains high-powered men how to weaponize reputation, rewrite custody, and paint maternal protectiveness as mental illness. I called Kendra the second I got cell service. She nearly choked when I read out the names. "This isn't just about Greg anymore," she said. "This is industrialized manipulation, and it's about to blow open." We filed the contents with the FBI. A federal task force is now investigating these groups under fraud, harassment, and illegal surveillance charges. I'm working with journalists to build a case that could become the first major media exposure of this underground legal network. But I don't care about the headlines. I care about the women still inside, still fighting with no idea that the game is rigged. Sophia wrote again. She apologized. She admitted she'd been pressured, threatened with losing her job, blackmailed over a past DUI Greg helped disappear for her. She said she never meant to betray me, but when Greg told her it was him or you, she picked survival. I told her I understood, because I had picked survival once too. But now, pick war. Lila's art was recently featured in a trauma awareness exhibition. Her piece, a collage of broken mirrors, with a pair of eyes stitched from newspaper headlines. She called it Reassembled. Jason is applying to pre-law programs. He wants to become a lawyer like Kendra, but better, stronger, fairer. And me? I still sleep with the lights on sometimes. I still flinch when the phone rings late at night. But I also speak at women's shelters now. I walk into those rooms, look into the eyes of women who haven't told anyone yet, and I tell them, they don't win. Not forever. They can't. Because I'm proof. I was broken into pieces, studied like a weakness, written off like a statistic. And I rose anyway. And now, I burn brighter than their darkness ever could. Thank you for stepping into another tale with me. Every story unlocks a different world, and I'm glad you were here for the journey. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my stories Unchained, where every ending is just the beginning of another adventure. Until next time, keep your mind open and your heart ready for the next story, Unchained.